Hello and good evening. I am Alphonso McGriff III. This is Alphonso Speaks, and I'm definitely in the house. It's 8:07. My goal is 8 o'clock. So I'm 7 minutes out of order, but this is okay. We're going to keep working to improve, be on time, and be the absolute best that we can be. I am, this is episode two. And in episode two, we're talking about keeping an open mind. But as I do, as far as the way I open the show every day, I have to remind people um, what a conscious conversation is and what a conscious conversation is. And a conscious conversation or the conscious conversation experience is a collaboration and movement that chooses love and enlightenment. The conscious conversation experience is a collaboration and movement that chooses love and enlightenment. Resolution is the successful solving of a problem. Ultimately, that is the goal of what we identify as a conscious conversation. Um, I'm here to help myself and people around the world transform conflict into conscious conversation that leads to understanding, resolution, and enlightenment. What is a conscious conversation? A conscious conversation is a verbal interaction where we speak with the desire to understand. We ask questions and share information. We take responsibility for our thoughts, words, and actions and control our prejudices and emotions, which, if left unchecked, will disrupt the goal of having a conscious conversation. The strength of a conscious conversation is its ability to inspire rather than manipulate. Ultimately, the conscious conversation experience is a pathway to understanding, resolution, and enlightenment. And this is the key. This is the key to having a conscious conversation. Um, a conscious conversation is a verbal interaction where we speak with the desire to understand. If there is no desire to understand, there can be no conscious conversation. So, the ultimate goal is to have a desire to understand. Now, for those who are interested in embarking on this conscious conversation experience and journey, um, I'd like to warn you ahead of time. This is not an easy path to tread. So I'll give you a warning. I have learned that developing myself can lead to unnecessary challenges with insecure people who are intimidated by those who have sense of self. It's not our problem, but it is one of the consequences of our personal growth. And when I tell you that, I really mean it. When you have a sense of self and you're among people who don't, their insecurities make you intimidate them. And when people are insecure, we have no idea what they're capable of. So I just want to let you know, embarking on this conscious conversation experience and journey and developing a sense of self and responsibility, it is not, and it comes with some challenges as it relates to other people who are insecure. And according to me, this is not necessarily the truth, but according to me, most of us, a high percentage of us, do not have a sense of self, mainly because of how we are trained and conditioned in this society and set up. And so when we start transitioning into the personal responsibility and sense of self, we come across challenges with people who don't have a sense of self and their insecurities. as I will always remind us or remind you that the Book of Abe, this is where this is the foundation from which I speak, the Book of Abe. So it's available on Amazon. The Roots of a Tree, the Genesis of a Conscious Conversation. So one of our guiding principles when we're talking about the conscious conversation experience is to maintain an open mind when we communicate. This approach promotes learning, understanding, and inclusivity in our professional interactions. Learning, understanding, and inclusivity. People feel included. The goal is to for us all to feel included in being engaged and involved in this personal growth. It's difficult to keep an open mind if one is sensitive to what other people have to say, especially when they have no idea of, say, my history, what my history is, and what kind of triggers I have created. So if I'm going to speak among a group of people, I have to keep in mind that none of us is aware of our histories. We're all here coming with everything that comes with us, mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally. And it's a secret to everybody in the group what your history is, what my history is. And so if somebody says something and I blame them for triggering me, then I'm not engaged in the idea of having an open mind. My mind is not open because it's like a time bomb. People who don't know you have no idea what your triggers are and what's going to set you off. But when people get set off, they fly off the handle at the person who they're accusing of setting them off. And 9 times out of 10, this person has no idea what the history and triggers are as it relates to the people they're sitting around speaking with. And in keeping an open mind, debating about who's right and wrong is not a part of the conscious conversation experience. When we share confidently while being aware of what we don't know, we make ourselves available to learn from others. Let me read that again. When we share confidently while being aware of what we don't know, we make ourselves available to learn from others. People will be more willing to be open enough to learn from us if they feel like we're interested in learning from them as well. So having an open mind also allows our consciousness to connect information dots. And information dots, I call information dots just information that we picked up during our lifetimes. And a lot of times the information hasn't connected itself so that it begins to make sense to us. So what happens is these information dots, according to me, they lay dormant until we come across more information that connects to those dots and begin to make things make sense to us. So having an open mind also allows our consciousness to connect information dots from prior conversations, giving us an understanding that we did not have before the conversation. Being open-minded, most importantly, creates an opportunity for a more harmonious conversation and speaking environment. So it's important for us to come to a conscious conversation experience with an open mind. Now, one of the things that I'm interested in talking about today, and it's kind of it relates to what I was saying earlier. It's difficult to keep an open mind if I'm sensitive to what other people say, especially when they have no idea what my history is and what kind of triggers I have created. So, um, one of the things I want to speak about is this word, the N word. Now, according to me, whether you say the N word or you say the word spelled out, it's all the same. The N word is what I call a new code word for being able to say the N word. And they both are the same thing. Now, let me put this on the table. I have evolved myself to the point that it doesn't matter who calls me that word, because I have uh, removed myself from having an emotional reaction to that word. I have worked on removing myself, and that it's not just that word. I've removed myself. I have worked on removing myself from having an emotional reaction to anything that I feel that I don't like or that is not good for me. So if somebody drops that word to me, it tells me more about them than it does evoke a reaction for me, from me. It tells me that, okay, somebody is and they have a desire to have an effect on how I feel, and they have a desire to have a negative effect on how I feel, and they have a desire to make me feel negative about myself. And as I was talking about yesterday, how much self-respect can I have if somebody can call me a name and I give them control over my entire mental, physical, spiritual, emotional reality? I give them control over my heart rate and my breathing rate and my blood pressure. How much respect do I have for myself if I hand all of that over to somebody because they call me a name, whether it be the N word or anything else? And like I said the other day, if you tell somebody they have no respect, self-respect, they'll be ready to fight. While at the same time, we demonstrate we don't have self-respect on a daily basis. Now, I am one who has compromised my self-respect many times in this lifetime because I've never been helped to understand what that compromising my self-respect means. And so keeping an open mind means when I'm talking to people, whether they say things intentionally or not, that touch me emotionally and physiologically, it's my responsibility to recognize that so that in my own best interest, I don't have a reaction that works against me. And that I question why I feel like reacting, and I get a handle on that rather than trying to control people who I feel like evoked the reaction or the feeling of wanting to react. Again, this is about self-respect too. So, and another thing that I said in the past through when I talked about um, having no people having no idea what my history is and what kind of triggers I've created. We create triggers when we don't resolve things or resolve issues. We don't have resolution. That is when triggers are created. And resolution is the successful solving of a problem. One of the keys to the successful solving of a problem is accepting reality. One of the core problems human beings have is the refusal to accept reality. Again, this is all a part of having an open mind. Refusing to accept reality is the cause of so much pain for so many of us. And as long as we don't accept that reality, whatever it might be, then over time, that situation becomes what we identify as triggers. Now, let me say something early in the game. This is my episode 2, and I need to say this very early. I don't claim to be a professional anybody outside of a human being. I don't have any uh, titles. I'm not a psychiatrist. I'm not a psychologist. I'm not diagnosing anybody. I'm not claiming to be one who has the solution for everything. What I'm doing is sharing information based on my own personal history and experience. Everything I say is based on my own personal history and experience. I can't tell you I read any of this in a book, and I can't tell you I have any degrees or anything like that as it relates to understanding human behavior. I don't. I share what makes sense to me based on my own personal experience. And I've been hanging around on this planet for a minute as it relates to a human lifetime. And so I'm sharing what I've learned and what makes sense to me. That's it. So I don't want to get it twisted. I don't want anybody to have me all on the internet claiming that I got PhDs and I'm making false claims about my history and background, because I don't. I have a 2-year degree from Capital Community College, and that's it. And it has nothing to do with psychology or human behavior. So I'm just putting that on the table. So I'm sharing what makes sense to me based on my own personal experience. And if it makes sense to you, then that could be a beautiful thing. So let me go back to where I was and say that denial of reality is a major problem. According to me, it's not necessarily the truth. The refusal to accept reality is a major problem amongst human beings, because if I do not accept the reality of a situation, then I cannot move to resolution. Resolution can only be attained through the acceptance of the reality that I'm dealing with. And acceptance of reality doesn't mean I agree with the reality, but acceptance of the reality as it is, because we have no control over it, puts us in the position to now come up with a plan on how to deal with the reality that we don't like. But if we never accept that reality, we can never come up with a plan, and we can never bring resolution. According to me, that's a fact. I I can't call it the absolute truth, But according to me, that is a fact of life. You can't bring resolution if you refuse to accept reality. And so much of us are in pain and have built many circles of trauma based on a series of realities that we refuse to accept. Um, I'm trying to think of an example of let's just say the N word, right? There's a reality about somebody saying the N word. And again, for me, the N word and saying the word out are both the same. There's no difference to me. The identification of that word as the N word is nothing more than a pass for somebody to say the N word spelled out. So let's talk about the N word. If somebody called me that, when you look at the so-called history of this word and how it's been used as it relates to race, 99 times out of 100, somebody's using it as a derogatory statement. Now, for me, I've come to accept the reality that in America, that word could fly because it has been extremely effective in evoking a reaction. So when somebody says that word, they're saying it to get a reaction, to confirm that they own you. And if you react, you confirm that you're owned. As much as we fight against so-called enslavement, we confirm our enslavement through our reactions to people saying things that we have identified as hurting us. That is a form of enslavement and ownership, because that means that anytime they choose, they can twist you and your whole life to the left just by saying something. That's called control. And the essence and foundation of the enslavement of any person or thing revolves around control. So we have to keep in mind, and back to that keyword, self-respect. We have those of us who react to that word have no self-respect in that moment. According to me, that's not necessarily the truth, but according to me and what I've experienced and what I've seen, those of us who react to that word do not have self-respect in that moment. It's impossible for self-respect to exist, and then we react to that. Those of us who have emotional and physical reaction to any form of name calling have demonstrated we have no self-respect. So what I'm going to do, again, in the idea of keeping an open mind involves receiving information so that we can use it to benefit us at a later date. So I work in the school system, and I'm in the cafeteria one day with a bunch of 4 and 5 year olds. And a 5 year old came up to me. And the 5 year old, let's call her Mary. Mary came running up to me. I love those little ones. They're just so honest and so beautiful. And they let you know if you're worthy. If your spirit is not right, they will not go anywhere near you. If your energy isn't right, they will not go anywhere near you. And no matter what is going on in my life, when I uh, found myself around those young people and they had these incredible reactions to me, I just, there's nothing, it's very difficult to make me feel better. So the 5-year-old comes running up to me. She said, Mr. Security, Danny said my hair is ugly. And she was looking up at me, and she was so serious in her desire to get me to deal with Danny. And I'm just so amazed because I'm saying at 5 years old, she cares about what Danny says to the extent she is twisted to the left. And she comes to get the big security man to get Danny. So, because of how I think, I said, Mary, do you like playing games? She just lit up. Yeah, I like playing games. I said, well, we're going to play a game. And she said, okay, what are we going to do? I said, Mary, we're going to play a game called Ghost. You know what a ghost is? And Mary said, well, yeah, it's kind of like an invisible person. I said, exactly, Mary. There we go. I said, so this is what we're going to do. Anytime Danny says something mean to you that's not nice, we're going to treat Danny like a ghost. That's the game we're going to play. And when we treat Danny like a ghost, that means we're going to act like we don't hear Danny and we don't see Danny, and nothing that he does or says matters. And she's smiling and she said, yeah. I said, so are you ready to play ghost? From when Danny's not being nice, you act like you don't see him, you don't hear him, and he doesn't matter. She said, okay, okay. So she ran, she took off running. I mean, she was ready to play ghost. She was on her ghost. She was very serious about playing ghost. No lie, I'm like 7 to 8 minutes later, here comes Danny. Danny comes running up to me, and Danny's like, Mr. Security, Mary won't talk to me. I said, Danny, how can you expect Mary to talk to you if you keep saying mean things to her? Maybe you should say nice things to Mary and be nice to Mary, and maybe she might talk to you. I said, can you say nice things to Mary? And he said, yes. I said, okay, we're good. And Danny took off back to the cafeteria table. And probably 10 minutes later, I looked up, and Danny and Mary were having fun, running around the table and doing everything they wasn't supposed to do, like they were doing, having a good time. That is them having a good time at lunchtime. And for me, I the goal was to empower that young lady so that she wouldn't have to depend on Danny to feel good. And her actions only depended on her, and she was fine. And it just so happened her actions were effective in having Danny adjust his ways. And I think more adults need to learn how to play ghost rather than have these emotional reactions and give people control. over their or our physiological well-being. Doesn't matter what word they use. Any word they use that we allow to make us feel twisted to the left. It's not about them. It's about how we handle it. Because if they said that word in Russian, we would just not pay any attention. Because they said it in English and we understand it, we make the decision to internalize it and take it personal. And I'm going to talk more about making the decision. But I'll say this right quick. Every emotion that we feel, outside of, like an initial situation where, maybe we hurt ourselves or stub our toe. I'm talking more about when we're reacting to other people and we decide that we're angry with them because of their behavior, what they said, or they won't move the way we want them to. That is an emotion we chose. We choose how to feel about everything in our lives, no matter what goes on, even if we have the right to. My mother or father died, I choose to feel sad about that. That's a choice that I made. But we'll talk more about that at some point. I just want to say tonight was more about keeping an open mind and helping people understand what the conscious conversation experience is. And you could be doing anything right now, but in this very moment, you chose to give me some time in your life. I do not take it for granted, whether you're watching after the recording is done or whether you're watching live. I do not take it for granted, and I appreciate you giving me this time in your life. I love you all. I always will. And I will absolutely never give up on our people, ever. Thank you.